Okay, when we left off last time, we had wrote our first lines of PHP. We did the hello world, and we used this PHP info function, and we got this big list of details about PHP in our web server. Today, let's talk about forms and functions so we extend our knowledge of PHP. We're going to learn how to make an HTML form, and then how to put an action to that form, and what to write in the PHP file to take action, to do the work for us. We're going to learn a little bit about functions, writing a function and calling a function. And I just want to point out that in this we're going to see the key elements of forms and how to make them, but we're not going to pay any attention to security. Whenever we're taking input from a user, we need to sanitize it, but we're not going to worry about that today. We're just going to worry about what makes up a form and how do we process the information using PHP. Alright, so what we have now is the index file. This is what we had from last time. We're going to make a new file, and I'm going to call it maths.php. I'm going to open up that file, and we're going to make an HTML file, just like we did last time. HTML tags, body tags, and let's give it a title. So if we save that and we go to our browser, we can now go to that new file, maths.php, and that's our title. Add them up. So what we're going to do now is make a form. So we do that with the form tag. So this is all HTML constructing a form. And what we're going to have in the form is some inputs. So we're going to have input as a type, and we're going to call these number fields. So that's an HTML element. You could have numbers, text field, text box fields, stuff like that. You have to give each element a name so that we can refer to it, and we'll call this num1. And we're going to close off that element. And what we're going to do here is add two numbers together, just as an example of how to take some information from a form and process it with PHP. So the second field is going to be a number as well. We're going to give that a name, and we're going to call this num2. And if we save that and go back to our file, you see now that we have a couple of fields on there, number fields, and the HTML gives us this nice up and down. That's all part of the HTML. It knows to do that with number elements. Nothing further required from us to do. We need a way for the user to submit this. So that's input type equals submit. That will give us a submit button. And we're going to name this equals. Save that, go to the form. Now we got a button. I'm going to give that button a value because I don't like this submit query information here. So I'm going to change that, and I'm going to call this equals. And that will change the label on the button. Oh, speaking of labels, we should label all of these. So we're going to label each input element. First number. Second number. There. Now we've got a form. That's great. That doesn't do anything though. If I put some numbers in here, nothing happens. So what we need to do is tell PHP about the form. So each form is going to have a method, and that's going to be either get or post. We're going to use post. You don't have to worry about it too much. Just for now, just know there's two types of methods, get and post. At the end of the day, when we make our forms, we're going to do it through the Backdrop API. But right now, just to extend our PHP knowledge, we'll show you how to make a straightforward HTML form. The other thing that you need to have is an action. And this is going to be the PHP file that does the work for us, that processes the form. So I'm going to make a new directory in our application. I'm going to call it bin. And bin is just going to be where I put all the worker functions, all the processing information. So that just made this new directory down here called bin. There's nothing in it right now. I'm going to make a new file in there, and I'm going to call it add.php. I'm going to open that file up. I'm going to close down the notes. We have a little bit more room to view our code. And what this is going to be is it's going to process our data for us. So we're going to open it up with a PHP tag, close our PHP tag. We're going to have some HTML in here to display to the user. And we'll introduce you to some CSS, some styling. So what we've got right now is a PHP block, an HTML block, and a style block. So what we're going to do with the PHP for now is I'm going to do print R, and that's how you print an array in PHP. And what we're going to do is print out the post array. So post array, when you have a form of method post, is going to store all the data that we named over here into this post array. So what we have to do is tell the action about this file here, so it knows to use this file to process the data. That's what's going to hook up the submit button to that file. So we're going to say bin, and what did I call this file? Add.php, I think. Yeah, add.php. So in the bin directory, we have this add.php file. So this action is what connects these things up so that when I hit the submit button, it's going to call over to this file. So let's take a look at our form now. I've saved these files. Now if I put some numbers in here, and then I press the submit button, the equals button here, this is our print R output. So print R is good for debugging, and it's giving us an array, and the key of this array is num1, and the key of this array is num2. So that's how we reference our values in the form. So this print R, those are the values you're seeing in the data that's processed by the form. And those keys there are whatever we put in here, num1, num2. So if we change this to Frankenstein and save that, go back to our form, refresh it, put some data in there, you see that the key of this one becomes Frankenstein. So this is a associative array in PHP. The key of this one is num1, the value is 9, the key of this one is Frankenstein, and the value here is 9. So I put 9 into both of those. So let's change that back to num2, because that's not a very descriptive name. In general, good to use descriptive terms for your variables and data so that you can keep track of it. So this statement is just a bit of a debug statement to figure out what we have to work with. So right now what I'm going to do is write our first function. A function is a piece of code that does some task for us, some piece of work for us. So all functions are going to start with the keyword function, then they're going to have a name, and then they're going to have parentheses, and then brackets that contains the body of the function. In the parentheses here, we're going to give the function arguments, and what we're going to do here is pass in num1 and num2 into our add function. And what we're going to have this function do is return num1 plus num2. these have to start with dollar signs. In PHP, all our variables are going to start with dollar signs. And that, in and of itself, doesn't do anything. It just defines a thing that can do some things. So what we have to do in order to make that happen is to call this function. So right now, if we go to the form, put some numbers in there, 6, 12. Oop, got a syntax error. Expecting a semicolon on line 5. So here's line 5. All statements in PHP have to end with a semicolon. I didn't put a semicolon at the end of that return statement, so that's why I got that error. So now, if I refresh that, I got rid of the error, but I didn't, oh, did I not save this file? Because it's still saying Frankenstein. Let's save this. Let's refresh this form. Put some numbers in here. There we go, num1, num2. But the function didn't do anything. The function's just sitting there. We didn't call it to work, to do the work. So what we have to do is call it. We're going to call it inside of our HTML to give a response to the user. So what we're going to do here is give this page a title, and we're going to call this the answer. And now we're going to make a containing div. I'm going to give that a class, answer. I'm going to close up that div. And now I'm going to call some PHP in here. So I'm going to open a PHP tag inside the HTML. And I'm going to say print, and I'm going to, this is where I'm going to call the function. And here's where I need to pass in num1 and num2 from the data that the user entered, and that's inside this post variable. So what I'm going to do is say add $_ capitals post, and then here's referencing it by the key. So this is num1, and the second argument is going to be also from the post variable num2. So this is how we reference elements of an array. Post is an array, and we're going to open with a square bracket and give it the key. So as a string inside single quotes, num1, and then another element of the same array, different key, num2. So if I save that, this is a call to this function, and I'm going to print out whatever this function returns to me, which should be the sum of these numbers. So if I go back to our form, refresh it so it loads the latest code, put some numbers in here, 33 and 18, click the submit button, you see now I've got my answer, 51. That's great. I'm going to give that a little style because it's not very exciting, so I'm going to say, I'm going to reference this class, the answer class that I put up here, the class on this div, and I'm going to put some CSS in here to make it a little more user-friendly. So I'm going to do text align center, and I'm going to make it bigger so that we can more readily see our answer. So let's say 23 rems. So now if we go back to the form, I'm also going to get rid of this debug statement, because now that I know what's in the post array, I don't need that anymore. So now if I go back to the form, refresh to load the latest code, put some numbers in there, 99 and 6, and process that. There. Now we got our answer nice and big. The last thing I'm going to do is just put a little navigational component in here. I'm going to put a new div and just put an anchor link to go back to our home page. So the leading slash is going to bring us to our home page. I'm going to say back to introduction. What's our form called? Back to add 'em up. And I'm going to close that anchor link, and that's just going to make a little convenience. Reload the page, put a couple numbers in here, 9, 2, the answer is 11, and now I just have a navigation element back to add 'em up, which can bring me back to, oops, I made it go back to the home page. I want it to go back to maths.php so I can get back to the form. So now, if I'm on maths, fill out the form. Now I got back to add 'em up. So instead of going back to the home page, it brings me back to the form. Great, now we know a little bit more about PHP. We've learned how to create functions and call the function in our HTML and how to hook up the form to our HTML worker, which is this add.php file over here. I hope that's helpful to your PHP learning curve, and I'll see you next time when we learn some more about PHP. Thanks. Bye.